Real Health Transformations is a podcast for the woman I once was and the woman I'm still becoming. It's for the new mom trusting her instincts, the seasoned mom questioning the science, and the party girl ready to trade Sunday scaries for sourdough starters. It's for the woman who's wrestled with weight, trauma, chronic illness, and the struggle to find balance in motherhood, career, and life. I'm your host, Holly Jean Mullen, a functional wellness practitioner and holistic real estate specialist. You are the expert on your body, and this show is here to help you cut through the BS, connect the dots between your health and your home, and find simple strategies that actually work for you. We'll have real conversations that matter, challenge the status quo, and keep it simple. If you're craving a calmer home, a clearer mind, or a healthier body, you're in the right place for real solutions, real encouragement, and real transformation. Hey friends, welcome to the show. Today's episode is so timely. Recently, Tucker Carlson's interview with Casey and Calley Means shed light on something we've all felt, that the medical and food industries often profit more from keeping us sick than helping us heal. That's not conspiracy stuff, that's actual fact. So this episode is all about breaking free from that cycle and reclaiming the power of our own health. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm thrilled to be joined by Hannah Wendt from TruDiagnostic. She is the guest on the show today. We're diving into the groundbreaking world of epigenetics. Now, imagine having the ability to not only understand your genetic predispositions, but to actually influence them through your lifestyle choices. The TruDiagnostic test, I was able to do one on my own before I had a chat with Hannah, so you'll get some insights on that. But this test gives you power back, and it does that by providing real, actionable insights into your metabolic age, your biological aging, and key longevity markers. So it goes beyond just a regular lab panel. With this data, you can actually take informed steps to improve your health rather than outsourcing your well-being to industries that may not have your best interest at heart and can even be caught in a bit of a pickle with conflicts of interest. Health really doesn't have to be so complicated. It really doesn't. Your daily habits, like what you eat, how you manage stress, how you even think, can actually switch genes on and off, impacting everything from your longevity to your risk of disease. This conversation is about more than just learning. It's about taking action. That's what it's all about here, folks. We're talking about how you can use this cutting edge science to empower yourself, make decisions that truly matter, and stop relying on a system that profits from illness. So if you're ready to take control, start thriving, this episode is sure to provide a fresh avenue on your roadmap. So I hope you enjoy it. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Real Health Transformations podcast. I'm your host, Holly Jean Mullen, and today I want you to imagine having the power to influence your health and longevity, and not just through diet and exercise, but by understanding how your lifestyle choices can actually switch genes on and off. And that's the fascinating world of epigenetics. That is what we're going to be talking about today. And for anyone who's ever felt limited by their genetics or struggled with health issues that seem to run in the family, this episode could be a game changer for you. So we're diving into habits, from food you eat, how you manage stress, all that stuff, and how it can potentially shape your gene expression. So here to share her knowledge and professional wisdom on the topic, I have a guest. I have Hannah Wendt with us, and Hannah is the Director of Operations at TruDiagnostic, where she is on a mission to, I'd say, revolutionize preventative healthcare through this cutting-edge longevity science. She has a biology degree from the University of Kentucky and a deep background in cell signaling research, which we can talk about what that is. She co-founded TruDiagnostics in 2020 just to further bring this knowledge to more people. Since then, the company has grown with her being there. I'm really excited to hear what the company is up to, how they're using this information that we'll talk about today, and just all things epigenetics. So welcome to the show, Hannah. So happy to have you on.
Thanks, Holly. I'm excited to chat with you. That was an awesome introduction.
Thanks. This is such an interesting field to me, and we'll definitely have you explain a little bit more about what exactly epigenetics is. But I'm curious, what excites you most about this work that you do?
That's a great first question. There are a lot of really exciting things about this work. Where this work really became most popularized is through its ability to measure the aging process on a cellular level, the biological aging process, if you will. That's still how people really enter this world or really start to dive into epigenetics and what it means. But what I'm most excited about is really using epigenetics as a discovery tool for unique, novel biomarker signatures that is a completely new field in and of itself. It's something we've never seen. It adds a different layer than what we've known before. And what's really unique about it is that these markers are stable enough to where you can measure them and understand your DNA regulation or your DNA expression levels, like you mentioned, Holly, but they're also changeable as well. So since they're changeable, they're going to have effects on your health outcomes. You said something to the extent of being able to now have your health in your own hands. And I say that a lot in a different way, which is really you don't have to be a victim of your own health. You're no longer that victim of your genetic predisposition, let's say for type 2 or metabolic disease, right? We know that better lifestyle choices, whether it be through dietary changes or exercise, are going to lessen your risk of type 2 diabetes epigenetically further on in life.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, I remember listening to Dr. Mark Hyman a long time ago, and I know lots of people have said this expression, but I heard him say it and it has stuck with me, but that genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And it really does, it's empowering. It puts us back into control.
Yeah, I think he says a couple other things as well. And it's obviously the work I live and breathe in, but I see it all over my social media, like ads that come up on my computer, which are statements like food is medicine, you are what you eat, your DNA or your genes aren't your destiny. And those statements, they make me smile and almost laugh a little bit because they're defining epigenetics or your DNA expression and regulation without explicitly stating it. So it's really cool to see this paradigm shift. We're starting to see it become more mainstream, and a lot of people obviously starting to want to be involved, at least it seems like to me, in their own health and really take it in their own hands. And the classical example of this and what we're talking about is twins, right? If you take twins, identical twins, that is, who are genetically the same, they don't only look the same, but you've physically measured their genetics and they match 100%. You notice that maybe one twin lives in New York City. They work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're running all over the place. They're ordering, takeout every day. And then you have another twin who lives just outside the city, has a work-life balance, makes their own meals, brings their own meals to work for lunch. This is obviously an extreme example I'm trying to give to you, but they're going to have different phenotypic outcomes. They're going to behave differently from the inside out according to their environment and their behavior and how they interact with their world. So that's a really good example. And I haven't actually given that one for quite some long time, but it's a classical example of how we can really be in control of our health outcomes.
Yeah. And would you say it goes as far, let's say these twins didn't live in different parts, but they grew up in the same house, but just their mindset on things, even if they're living in the same home and eating the same types of food, but just the way they think about the world around them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's definitely a more subtle example, but also a great one. It fits that same idea, that same mold that we're talking about. Even the way you talk to yourself affects your epigenetics downstream. So if you're the type of person where you may be a little bit more pessimistic, you beat yourself up, you're like, oh, I made that mistake. You can't stop thinking about it for weeks on end. I mean, that's going to eat away at you. And you're probably not going to be the happiest person to be around, right? You're not going to be in a great mood. But if you're the type of person who you're like, okay, I made a mistake. I know what I did wrong. I learned from this experience. I will try not to make that same mistake again. And you move on and you realize that it was a growth opportunity, then you're going to have, a more optimistic outlook, a positive outlook on life. You'll probably be in a better mood as well. That's still going to change your epigenetic expression. So it can be, even something as tiny, but very powerful as how you're actually thinking in your internal monologue.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. So how did the study of genetics, let me rephrase. Did the study of just studying genes and genetics, did that morph into epigenetics, or how are the two different, and where was the split off, if there was a split off, or how did this happen?
Yeah, so genetics, as we know, let's just define it, although a lot of your listeners are probably familiar with it. You get 50% parent one, 50% from parent two. It makes up your code, your uniqueness. It's responsible for about 20% of those health outcomes, as you mentioned, with the gun and pulling the trigger from Dr. Mark Hyman. Your genes don't change in any cell type. They're actually the same in all cell types. You can't do anything to affect them, though. And, epigenetics, on the other hand, it's going to be about 80% of all those health outcomes. It's going to be different in every single cell type. You're going to be able to change these and actually control for most of them for the context of this conversation. And really, the first study, who's also a collaborator with us at TruDiagnostic, he's an awesome man, where they started to say, okay, we can actually control kind of these outcomes, is one by Dr. Randy Jerdal. He's out of NC State University, or was before he retired, and still connected with them. You may remember the agouti mouse experiment. Does that sound familiar?
It doesn't, no.
Yeah, so the agouti mouse study is one where they looked at a particular gene called the agouti gene, AGOUTI. They call these the agouti mice. And if this gene was on or off, it would give the mice a different coat color. So that gene acts like a sensor for the amount of DNA methylation or expression of the color of the gene. So these mice were a really good model to study how maternal nutrients and environmental factors actually affect your epigenetics and regulate gene expression, because what they did is they took two mice, they were pregnant, they gave one mice some methylated cofactors, they didn't give the other mice methylated cofactors, and then the offspring would come out, very obese, not a great coat color. And then the ones that you did give the supplements to, they came out as a better phenotype. So we're able to, pass off these epigenetic expression levels from mom to offspring, but also control for some of those based off of the nutrient intakes we were giving them.
Wow. Okay. I'll have to look that up. That's interesting. I picked up on a couple words that you use. You use the word methylated, unmethylated. Can you break down the difference between methylated and unmethylated DNA? What does that even mean?
Yeah, definitely. So DNA methylation and epigenetics can sometimes be used interchangeably, but they don't mean the same thing. DNA methylation is an epigenetic modification. And again, epigenetics just means we're looking on top of your genes, we're regulating your gene expression. So DNA methylation is a process by which we can do that. DNA methylation, think of it as almost like a light switch or a light bulb being turned on and turned off. If something's methylated, that means there's a little carbon group, a CH3 group, so a carbon and 3 hydrogens that's kind of binding to a site of your genes, and it's turning that gene off. So your expression level is going to be not present of that particular outcome, depending on what the gene is. So if something's unmethylated, it's just going to mean the opposite. That carbon and 3 hydrogens is not present, which means that gene is going to be expressed or that gene is going to be turned on. So it's a balance, right? We don't want everything turned off. We don't want everything turned on. A really classic example of that is we want our tumor suppressor genes that are going to get rid of tumors, be turned on. So you'd want those unmethylated. But you would want your cancer genes or your oncogenes to be methylated and turned off. So, there's a healthy balance there, Holly. I really like to call it shifting these methylation markers in your favor.
Okay, that makes more sense. Now, I know that it's a hot thing to talk about is MTHFR mutations and how that affects methylation. So how does that come into play? Because I hear it a lot from clients where it's almost like, oh, well, I have MTHFR, so I can't do this or I can't do that. Like, is it as important? I know there's different variations and combinations of mutations there, but is it really that big a deal for how our health expresses, I guess, is the question?
Yeah, definitely. So the MTHFR gene, that's a really popular genetic variant we talk about because we know if we have a variant, an unwanted variant, then we can supplement with methylated cofactors to help with that deficiency. So there's a really strong connection between MTHFR and actually epigenetics as well. There's a really cool study I can talk about here. But first and foremost, the difference between the MTHFR gene and the DNA methylation is that the MTHFR pathway and process for that gene is 1 out of 50 million methylation processes that go on, which is, again, just shows you the scope of maybe how important MTHFR is, but also the possibilities of the importance of all of these other markers too. So what a group of researchers actually did is they looked at the MTHFR gene, specific variants of it, and how it affects biological aging. So women in particular who are homozygous, they have the MTHFR 677CC variant, they actually have increased biological aging. So do men if they have the TT. But women were the only one to see a reversal in biological age after supplementation of a methylated cofactor. So 5-methylfolate, methylcobalamin. And men did not see that same reversal because I think the dosing was the same in the study. So if dosing was changed maybe a little bit based on the exact needs of the user, I'm sure they'd be able to cross that threshold. But that's a pretty interesting study, right? Because it's connecting a specific genetic variant and your epigenetics, which is going to be what's used to measure that biological aging process.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe it's with the grand scheme of things, since there are all these other methylation processes, it's okay, yes, that specific mutation can be a factor, but also we have to look at the bigger picture too, and not just think of that as, oh, well, I have this, so I can't XYZ.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll see more of those studies hopefully come out as well. I think the more we can do more multi-omic studies, combining of this data, the better we'll be able to understand our health outcomes in the end.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to do the TruDiagnostics epigenetics test myself, and I was really impressed with how the results were presented. And I do want to talk about some of the things in the report and how it comes up, but I'm really curious to know, is this something that you do on yourself, and what changes have you seen in your own health using this information?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. And I've tested a multitude of times. I really like this question because your epigenetics is super unique to you as an individual. A lot of customers who do this testing, or clients or patients or even healthcare providers, they're doing this on that level, the true N of one, meaning we have to treat everyone individually, even though we have these larger cohorts or these peer-reviewed clinical trials and studies, and we know what works with them. It doesn't mean it may start as a good guidance or a good guiding point, but it doesn't mean we're going to see the same effects on us at an individual level. So I've tested a lot of times. I've tested a long time ago, really when we were first starting TruDiagnostic and first had access to that pace of aging marker, the Dunedin pace, which is a really popularized one. And I was the highest, I had the highest score for my age group. I was above 1, which is not great. This is a value that comes back between 0.6 and 1.4. It tells you how quickly you're aging biologically for every 1 chronological year. So, you want that to be below as below one ideally, but as far away from one as possible. So it was kind of a wake up call. I think it had to do with a lot of the stress I was undergoing with the startup of a company, with running around. Even though I do love that lifestyle and being busy. I mean, everyone's busy and that's a subjective kind of definition, but making movement, I think, on the company. So there's a study, it's a really popular study within the space called the Calorie Randomized Control Trial, published in Nature in, I think, January or February of 2023. And it looks at a 10% overall caloric restriction in healthy non-obese adults over a 2-year period. I decided, hey, I'm going to practice a little bit more caloric restriction. Let's see if this works on me. So it's not necessarily intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding. It's just eating less. And it works really well. My pace of aging has continued to go down. I consistently now stay around between 0.78 and 0.8. I want to get it a little bit lower, but I don't usually eat lunch. I try to make healthier eating decisions, and that has seemed to personally work for me, along with managing my stress more. So I do some meditation now, just got the certification for the transcendental meditation. So I've been trying to work that into my lifestyle a lot, and I've really liked that and think that it's helped.
Yeah, I will say that I could see so much potential with this report, and I am all about people taking health into their own hands. And if there are things that you can do to change the trajectory of how you're aging, that's amazing. But also to be able to see it and track it and to see that the things that you are doing are making an impact and a difference, whether or not you see that outwardly, that you can see it on the inside with what's going on with your genes. The report, it breaks down a bunch of different summaries. You mentioned the weight loss one with the caloric restriction. That was very interesting, but it's also looking at telomeres and your physical fitness and rate of disease. I will say I took this test just recently over the summer in July, but in January, I started a new health journey. I've lost a ton of weight. I've improved my insulin sensitivity, gotten back into regular workouts. So I would love to have seen what I was let's say December of last year to how it looks now. Because my report now, I am older. It said a lot of things. I'm older than I am chronologically. So it's oh no, we gotta do some changes. But at least it was encouraging to where now it's almost gamified, where it's okay, I can do something about this.
Yeah. And we're even, you probably saw in your report, hopefully as well, we're even able to give you, recommendations on the reporting too, right? Which is something that has been a limitation previously. So I think that fix has really opened up the conversation. Again, it's not just kind of this fun test that people do once and never think about again. It's all right, now I have some actionable insights. I know why I'm aging slower. I know why I'm aging faster. Here are the things I want to change and work on. So the first test is definitely important. You need that. Just like you said, Holly, a lot of people wish that they would have taken this a long time ago before they really started to kickstart their own health to see the change that would result in a positive yield, of course, between both of them. But the second test is more important than the first, the third more than the second, and so on and so forth. And people are usually doing this testing every 6 to 12 months or so as a way to really track.
Okay. Yeah. So in the report, my fasting glucose came back 82% higher than higher than 82% of the rest of the population. Now I know that I have type 1 and type 2 diabetes in my family. And this has always been my thing for me. But this is a little bit surprising that it's higher than 82%, because there is a statistic thrown around that something 80% of the population has metabolic syndrome. Now I know fasting glucose is not the sole determining factor for metabolic syndrome, but it does make me question the accuracy of this statement of 80%. It's where did those numbers come from? Now I'm curious. So when your report says that I'm higher than 80% of the population, Where does that number come from? Is that from your testing pool, or what are you guys looking at?
Yeah, that's going to be the Harvard pool. So it's going to correct. So your population isn't going to be, your percentile is not going to be according to everyone, according to men, right? It's going to be women who are, I think it's like 2 years younger and 2 years older than you. So it's a really tight kind of window of people you're being compared to. But these are general population people, right? It's not our TruDiagnostic cohort, which is really, really healthy. It's also important to note, though, Holly, that kind of HbA1c marker is the DNA methylation interpretation of that HbA1c. So we're not trying to predict HbA1c directly, but it is highly, highly correlated and predictive of type 2 diabetes, along with our fasting glucose marker. That's called an EBP, or an epigenetic biomarker proxy. This is something I'm also really excited about, that I hinted at when you asked me that first question.
Yeah.
It's the idea to use epigenetics as a tool or measurement or proxy for other biomarkers. So you'll see that description of the EBP kind of above where you're looking at the report. We even do reporting on your CRP, your IL-6, your VO2 max, your FEV1, your grip strength, your gait speed. Those would all be considered EBPs as well, which again really just opens the door for all of these new insights to be measured at a pretty low cost. The cost will come down over time with one blood spot card, so not that large of a sample, with a pretty quick turnaround time of about 2 to 3 weeks, with all of your results delivered in one place. So that's really the end goal, is the simplicity and how we can make this affordable and useful, even down to the general consumer. We know, it's again a little pricey for the average consumer, we think, right now. So we're working on that too.
But if you think about it, in comparison to all the functional lab tests that are out there, like people spend hundreds, thousands of dollars getting labs done all the time. And I feel like this was a really comprehensive overview. Like I have a picture now of what's going on. Do you guys share the raw data with people too, or how does that work?
Yeah, definitely. So we're a CLIA certified lab, meaning it's a fancy way to say, hey, we hold the, certification, follow all rules and regulations by, state law. And legally, we have to keep the physical sample on site for up to 6 months. But we have that raw data file of yours from that particular time point that we store in our cloud with Amazon Web Services, which is very secure. Because as new algorithms or insights are uncovered, we can pull that file down from the cloud. It's actually called an IDAT file, and run a new analysis on you. So we just came out with our Symphony age, the aging of 11 different organ systems. People could go back who even took our test 4 years ago and update it, even though we would want, more of an updated sample if it's outdated. So if anyone ever wants to request that raw IDAT file, it's your data. You decide what you want to do with it, or if you want it destroyed, we could do that as well. It's going to be hard to interpret it though. Unlike genetics, where there's all these companies that are like, oh, upload your genetic data or learn these insights, pay $10 and get an abundance of health reports. They don't have that for epigenetics, and the reason being is because all of these algorithms that are created, or these interpretation methodologies, are going to be created by private companies like us, in conjunction with university and academic related partnerships, which means we own the rights to them, we patent them, and we would have to basically sell them for a licensure fee, since we work on those with the universities themselves, which is again kind of our entire business model, right? Are these predictors.
Yeah. Do you, or I'm sure you get this question, so how do you kind of explain to people out there who are very private about wanting to share their data, because there are some sinister theories going around in the world about taking our data, and is it protected, and who gets it? Now, I know you said it, you guys keep it protected and stuff, but what do you say to someone who is skeptical about sharing, but they really want to know this information?
Yeah. My reply is, well, if you've already measured your genetics, doesn't matter. And if you have a phone, it probably doesn't matter.
I know.
No, but in all seriousness, I mean, there's
No, I say the same thing. It's like, if someone wants your information, it's out there. They're going to get it. Like, drop a hair somewhere.
it's already out there first and foremost.
Yeah.
If you have a camera on it, like, yeah, you're done. So basically, it's just the world we live in, unfortunately, which is like sad to say. But all joking aside, we are HIPAA compliant. We're SOC 2 compliant. Something really unique about an epigenetic raw data file is it's changeable, right? You can never actually track it back to the end user. It's going to be basically a bunch of numbers and a bunch of CPG codes or cytosine phosphate guanine telling you where that methylation is happening on that location of the DNA. And then we have a de-identified registration process where you register your sample using a barcode, and then you actually can do it in an anonymous way as well. So you don't have to put your name. You don't even have to put like any information associated with yourself. We don't need anything to provide these reports to you besides your blood spot card and your sample. So it's really safe in that way. Like, unlike genetics, right? If you have your genetics profiled, I mean, that's your code. If this happens all the time where, crime scenes will go and ask 23andMe for data matched kind of analyses and things like that. So yeah, it's more safe in that way. We denature the DNA really at the beginning of the process. So after that, you can't even track it back to that end user.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to bring it back and make it a little more relevant to my audience, my listeners. A lot of my clients are women, and they're struggling with weight loss resistance, hormonal imbalances. I know you touched on the part of the report that can say whether or not you're a good candidate for like calorie restricted diets. Can you tell me a little bit more about that part of the report? How's it determined, and how can someone use that information?
Yeah, there is a part of the report. It's the last insight that's basically telling you, hey, can you lose weight from caloric restriction? Yes, no, or maybe. Are you an intermediate responder? This is based off of one gene called the PON3 gene. We look at it, I think it's 11 different methylation positions or sites on that particular gene. And this is really predictive of, again, kind of your metabolic status almost, because that's really what it comes down to, Holly. It's not calories in versus calories out as we once thought it was. It's really, how can you metabolize those calories, right? Are you having a high functioning metabolizer, or maybe not so much? Again, based on hormones, based on all these other factors, based on maybe menopause, right? Perimenopause as well, what stage you're at in your life. So this acts as guidance depending on your goals. I would say you're not really looking for one outcome one way or another. It's not good or bad. I don't think we have to label it that way. I think it's, hey, are you looking to lose weight or are you not? And if you're looking to lose weight, again, it's not great to be a full responder or a non-responder. It depends on how you want to lose that weight. So if you're a full responder, that means you would absolutely lose weight from caloric restriction. We'd recommend doing that caloric restriction. And regardless of what these results say, we still recommend caloric restriction for aging and in terms of increasing lifespan and health span. So that's great. If you're an intermediate responder, it may work, it may not. You can definitely trial it yourself, but you may also want to change other lifestyle factors as well that I'll list here for the non-responders. If you're a non-responder, you're not going to lose weight with caloric restriction. Again, we're not talking about 3, 4, 7-day fast, right? We're talking about just consistent overall caloric restriction. If you're a non-responder, that's really where you really want to step back and say, all right, what does my diet look like? What does my physical fitness exercise routine look like? Am I doing all aerobic based exercises? Do I need to maybe switch to anaerobic based exercises? Should I add in recovery, rest days? And then as it relates to the diet, what am I actually eating? Am I intaking a lot of sugar? Am I drinking alcohol? Am I not consuming enough protein? Am I consuming too much protein? So it's a big rework. And then, of course, I'll just say it. Everyone's probably thinking of it too. Like, you're going to lose weight if you're on a GLP-1. So if it's like nothing's working, it's not going to follow the same mechanism that we're talking about here. But of course, if you're any of those categories and you take a GLP-1, you are going to lose weight.
Okay, this is good because there's always just like some generic advice out there about like, this is how you lose weight. This is how you don't do it. And that calories in, calories out argument that still has not been put to rest.
Right. And again, I don't think caloric restriction is for everyone, right? You don't want it to do it if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, if you are an athlete and you have a certain muscle mass you're trying to obtain or a certain goal. So you want to do it with a healthcare provider, right? You want to do it in a safe way that works for you. And then you want to make sure you're still eating the correct diet. You don't want to make sure you're, restricting your calories, but also eating, French fries, cheeseburgers, pizza, for those calories.
Right. Yeah. That food is still information, and it is still being processed in our body, either for our health or not. You mentioned calorie restriction, but then you also said not like fasting for a couple days. So where does therapeutic type of fasting have a role in here, if at all, when it comes to gene expression, not necessarily weight loss?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some connections and some correlations there. I would say as it relates to biological aging, we just don't know. We don't have all of that information available for us. We are looking to do a clinical trial with Prolon here very soon, the 5-day fasting mimicking diet. So we'll see. I think there's a lot to be learned, because then what you do, Holly, is you actually look at individual gene expression level changes from sample 1 to sample 2, sample 2 to sample 3, and 1 to 3, and so on and so forth on, hey, which gene expression levels are actually changing? And then maybe can we understand the mechanism by how this is working too?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to see the results of that. I will say, most of my clients, the women I see, they are under eating. They are on calorie restriction, whether trying to or not. And I don't know if that's more like diet culture or just habit or what, but clearly they wouldn't be coming to me if that was working for them. So I like that there's more information, there's a bigger picture, and there's more to find out here. Now, I'm 44. I'll be 45 in December. My report showed that I'm younger than my chronological age. Yay. But my overall symphony age was 52 and my hormonal age was 54. So let's talk about the powers we have to make these numbers more favorable. Is it something that we can do specifically? It's like if I was just wanting to improve my hormonal age, can you target it, or is it more of a overall thing going on here?
Great question. Out of all of the ages that we have, our hormone age is what I would say the most weakly powered in terms of the biomarkers which were used to create it. However, it doesn't mean it's less predictive of outcomes. So the hormone age is predictive of breast cancer, we know, and I think a couple others as well. But the only biomarkers used in the creation of that were IGF-1 and DHEAs. So you're not gathering, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. I mean, there's estradiol, right? There's a whole list that you could add. The reason, though, is because this information is not included in biobanks and large data sets in biobanks. So that's why we work with the providers we do, because they're doing a lot of that expanded hormone panel testing, right? Where they're getting those markers at the same time they're doing the epigenetic testing. And then we can correlate those together and see, okay, well, what's actually going on here? So there still needs to be a lot of work done in terms of how can we make these better? How can we power them a little bit further as well? But yeah, Holly, I'm wondering if, you've tested your hormones recently too, and what those look like. You don't have to talk about it, but just, think about that a little bit. How do your hormones look? Are you doing a panel every 6 months, which would be, recommended just in general for overall well-being and health. But also, yeah, definitely pay attention to those IGF-1 levels and those DHEAs.
Yeah. And see, I think that's a good example of how to use this report to then be like, okay, I need to look into what's going on here. I should go and get my hormones tested just to get an overall picture. There was something else in the report that said, if you're low here, we recommend following up with your practitioner for additional labs. So that's really all it said. So how could someone use this information that they're getting here to partner with their healthcare provider? Would you say, hey, I got this report done and it suggests I go and get more labs? What do you say to your doctor? Your doctor, if they're mainstream, they might look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah, I think find a functional doctor and be done with it. Don't go to your general practitioner. Find someone who is curious and has an open mind and willing to learn, which some GPs absolutely may be, but I would say, I'm definitely stereotyping, but based on experience, a lot of them probably aren't, right? So I would, look for someone. We can always refer you to someone as well. Like we have a massive database of these healthcare providers who, do this type of testing, are really familiar with additional laboratory values or longevity medicine. So it depends at the end of the day, like what you're looking for, what you want. GP will, if you take that to them, Holly, would probably do a really limited hormone panel on you. Probably doesn't look into everything that we would want to dive into that someone, we traditionally work with would.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a great resource to have. So let's say someone comes and they want to do this testing, where do they find those resources? Is that just something that's like sent, like here's your report, also there are these other resources, or what's the best way for someone to get this information, get started, and then get all the follow-up stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So TruDiagnostic.com is the best way to get all of that information. We just redid our website. It looks really pretty with updated branding. So we're excited about that. But just reach out to our support team. So we don't publicize, the list of all of our contacts or healthcare providers on the website. But if you have, recommendation, or if you have a need or want of, male versus female, located within your area, virtual, specializes in XYZ. We can filter based off of the information you provide us, or again, give you kind of people we'd recommend for your specific scenario.
Okay. Well, that's good, because I will say that I have people asking me all the time for recommendations for practitioners near them who would be more functionally minded, since I work all over the state. So that is actually a good resource. Before we wrap up, is there any final advice or takeaways that you want to leave with the audience? And then I know you mentioned the website for learning more, but is there a better place to connect online or to follow you or all that good stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Website has a lot of great information. The support team is awesome. They really do such a great job. If you can't find everything there, or you just want to learn and you want more information as well, we're all on social. We're kind of revamping our marketing. So we should have some really cool new insights regarding studies and keeping up with what we're doing here. I also have my other podcast, which is called Everything Epigenetics. So it's a way to just talk with researchers, see what's going on in the field. And I have my website, everythingepigenetics.com as well. If you want to dive into the science a bit more, it's more heavy, I would say, on the science part.
But I will say that this is just scratching the surface of that rabbit hole, because even just this conversation and my own report, now I'm curious to learn more, where I'm not necessarily super science minded like that, but now I'm more fascinated and I would like to take those baby steps to seeing more things that I can do for myself, and then also learn so I can help my clients navigate this as well. So
yeah. Definitely. Well, no, if anyone has, any questions whatsoever, we're more than happy to help and would be happy to have another conversation about it as well.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I thank you so much for joining us today. We'll start wrapping up this episode here. I will say that I really hope this conversation has been valuable to my audience. I know it has been for me. And just remember that while we cannot change the genes we're born with, we do have the power to influence those genes themselves just through our daily habits. So whether you are exploring tweaking your diet or just trying to make more informed, healthy choices, just know that every step you take is a better step towards a better life and towards your goals and towards longevity. You do have more power. You don't have to just say, well, I've already messed up, I might as well just give up. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Holly. I appreciate your time.
All right, you have a great day, and I'll see you next time on the show, guys. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Real Health Transformations. That was a fantastic conversation that we had with Hannah in the study of epigenetics. And I just want to wrap it up and close us out by saying, remember that no matter what tests or genetics may reveal, our ultimate trust is in the report of the Lord. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and by His stripes we are healed. Our faith is not in the diagnosis or in the genetic markers, but in the power of God to bring healing and restoration to our bodies. We can control the way we live our lives, but we also can stand firm in the truth that we are more than conquerors through Christ and that our healing is already secured by His promises. So no matter the circumstances, we can walk in faith, knowing that God's plan for us are plans for good and to give us hope and a future. So that is what I wanted to close out with. I'm so grateful to have you on this journey with me, and I can't wait to continue exploring these topics together as we're all just on this mission to be our best selves, right? And it is my hope and my prayer that this episode blesses you. Until next time, bye for now. Thanks for listening to Real Health Transformations. I hope this episode met you where you are and helped you cut through the noise, maybe get a little closer to the real practical solutions you've been looking for. Remember, everything shared here is for education and for inspiration, not medical advice. I am not your doctor. I am a podcast host. I am your encouraging digital friend. Always do what is right for you and consult a trusted healthcare provider before making any big changes. If you loved what you heard today, please subscribe, share with a friend, and let's keep having the conversations that matter without the fluff. Find me on Instagram. Let's keep this conversation going and keep questioning things. Keep finding what works for you. You've got this. I'll see you next time.